because Warfronts are being tested today. In fact, immediately, 2 hours from now, Warfronts have been tested. So this is going to have to finish on time. Then what I will do is stop the stream and then start it up again as a different one. And for actually, hopefully, enough people in the guild to try out the Warfronts. We will see. We will see. First thing, I've got a couple of things. Hello, everyone, by the way. So the video I did yesterday seemed to go okay. That was quite good. I was a bit unsure about that one. So I've got it in my mind just to set, you know, the start of every week to do either a speculation or a discussion video. So I've put on the community tab on the YouTube channel just a little message for people to come up with any suggestions. If you throw them there, then I will go with democracy, basically, whichever idea seems to get the most traction. By the time I have to commit and actually start doing it, then I'll do it then. The other thing I want to start off with, because this was something else. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good wherever you are. Am I excited with the direction is WoW is heading for BfA and finishing up Legion? I don't know yet. I'm still hesitant. I am going to just say, again, a start of here. I mean, in something like this where anyone can talk about anything, I'm sure we've done things in the past that have basically been spoilers, but it has just come to my mind today. Maybe I should just mention at the start of here there could easily be spoilers here. So, basically, you know, like in the video I was talking about yesterday, regardless of what Battle for Azeroth is really about, one thing it's definitely not about is what a lot of people think it's about, which is this faction v faction thing. That's not what it is. It can't be. It doesn't make any sense with the storyline when you're playing it, especially with all the Azerite armor and stuff like that. It's not that. It's something else. I just don't know what yet. Blizzard aren't saying what. I think I know what, but they're not saying. But anyway, yes. Yes, the intros. I am going to still keep working on them. I know some people have gone, oh, they're really terrible. Yes, they are really terrible. They will get better, I hope. And then hopefully they can stabilise a little bit more. But yeah, there was this thing. So these have been in before, but this is like a new iteration of it. So obviously with Mag'har Orcs coming in, you know, there's a new line of jokes and flirts. These are terrible. I'm going to read some of these. These are basically there's male and female orcs. The male. Oh, hello. I've done a thing. The male ones are just bad, but I'm going to read some anyway. The female ones are disturbing. So let's get these out of the way first. I'm just going to read these. So the male flirts. Oh, I've got to read these. So, are you ready for this? Is your mother a fire elemental? Because you are smoking hot. Care to take a walk with me in the shadow moonlight? Some of these are awful. Where am I going to go? What's the... I'm a sensitive guy. Please don't break my mag heart. They're absolutely shocking. Some of the jokes are quite good, though, for the male one. Hi, Higpig. So, I never met Gul'dan, but I hear he was a nightmare at parties. Always trying to spike the punch bowl. Where was the other one? Oh, yeah. The Laughing Skull Clan booed me off the stage at the comedy club. With a name like that, you'd think they'd have a sense of humour. This one I quite like, though. I've got to try and get into character. The chiropractor in Orgrimmar has done wonders for my back. I wonder how many people are actually going to go with straight back talks. At least for the novelty, until they decide they like it hunchy again. Oh, no, Kisasha, that's just terrible. Oh, no, what have I done? I've done a bad thing. I've done a bad thing. I've done a bad thing. I've gone away somewhere. Ah, bugger. Hang on, I've got to find them again. They've disappeared. Right, the female one. Some of them are just disturbing. Like, on the flirt ones. A green orc gave me a candy heart that said, I fell for you. Fell with one L. I told him he could keep his demon's blood and clobbered him with my mace. Last person to hit on me learned what hitting on really means. This one's quite good, though. A bleeding hollow shaman just flirted with me. At least I think I did. He was either winking suggestively or he'd just sacrificed an eye. But some of them, it's like these last two. Just because I'm enjoying your company doesn't mean I also don't want to punch you. And before we go any further, I need to know, how high is your pain threshold? Imagine being told that on a date. And then some of the jokes as well are fairly brutal. Azeroth has so many rules about who you can stab, who you can't stab, who you can punch, who you can't punch. You guys just need to lighten up. Oh, this one's quite good as well. Draenor, 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 Draenor. I'm just going to say I'm from Outland. Oh dear. But the male ones are just sort of appalling, most of them. But the female ones, they're just disturbing. Just disturbing. Anyway, let's have a look what we were saying. The battle's going to be distraction. Well, it is. The thing is, I mean, the crux of the matter is, the Azerite is coming out of Azeroth. That's nothing to do with Azeroth. That's because Sargeras stabbed it with a sword. There's an interesting point I was about to pick up in the video as well, but it was a bit of a side issue. I might come back to it. So we've got this Azerite. Okay, we're using it for fun times. But we're being given this Heart of Azeroth. That's a gift directly from Azeroth, the planet, who wants to help us to do something. Now, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know in the storyline whether Azeroth has just given it to either someone on the Alliance or someone on the Horde. That doesn't matter. The point is that the Azeroth is giving a champion this thing to help them empower the armor made of Azerite to make them super powerful. They're not going to do that to help them win a faction war, because as far as Azeroth's concerned, both sides have been helping to defend Azeroth. So that makes no sense. You know, it has to be for some massive threat. That massive threat is not Ashara. That's silly. You know, she's just an annoying nagger. So yes, there has to be something big. As I say, I think it's what I think it is. But whatever it is has to be pretty huge. And this battle thing is just a sideshow. You know, Blizzard have never paid the slightest bit of attention to the faction war, really. They keep bringing it up. I mean, remember, at the end of MOP, right, because there was, again, this cooperation going on, and then it all sort of... you know, Blizzard was sort of talking about them wanting to emphasise this Alliance versus Horde thing again, but they never do. They never do. They obviously have some reason for wanting Horde and Alliance on separate continents. That's, you know, obviously a thing. Largely, at any rate. Obviously, the Blood Elves are still going to be based on Eastern Kingdoms, and Draenei are still going to be based in Kalimdor, or Island off Kalimdor, whatever. But yeah, I don't really know why people just have it in their head that it's a faction expansion. Will the old gods potentially be gaining strength from Azeroth's blood? I don't really think so, because I mean, they were imprisoned. I don't actually know where they were like at what point, what level of depth. Maybe they had access to loads of Azerite. I don't know. Maybe it's poison to them. I don't know. No idea. But the thing is, I mean, there's obviously an old gods link in the expansion. You know, they've not tried to hide that as such. It's just been very subdued. But at the moment, there's just not enough emerging about it. It's been kept like super secret. You hope BfA will end the Alliance versus Horde thing. It'll never end, because people just have it in this thing. Or it'll start to, you know, because the first Warcraft was Orcs versus humans, and you know, it's sort of gone from there. So there'll always be that thing. But the reality is, in a PvE game, like I've said time and time again for many years, in a PvE game, we have this common threat. The common threat is what it is. So we always have to lump together to fight it. But we've done away with the Legion now, and I just think we're going to be doing away with Old Gods next. And then both those things are gone. Maybe, ironically, that leaves it open to focusing on each other as factions. I don't know. But then, again, when you've got your premier content coming from raids, well, you have to have, it's all right them saying, oh, you can have some faction-specific bosses. Sure. You can't have all of them faction-specific. Unless, again, they're all just carbon copies of each other and all have the same mechanics but just cosmetically different. Consider this. A meteor is heading for Earth and some nice aliens lend us some super lasers to destroy it. No, 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 no. It's not what you do. You don't do that with a meteor. You just push it to one side. Do you think we wouldn't use the same laser as a weapon? We would. Of course we bloody would. But the fact of the matter is, whatever we use the Heart of Azeroth for, Azeroth has a purpose in mind for it that we will use it for. It's just that that purpose is not obvious yet, because all that we know so far of BfA is, each side's going to lose a city, and I don't know, the Alliance is going to gain a bombed out Undercity, and the Horde is going to gain a whole pile of charcoal. Do we think we'll get rid of the factions? No, I don't think anything fundamental about the game like that in terms of the structure of the game will change. I mean, the thing is, what I'd like to do is roll on a few years, and quite a few years probably, and just see what they have in store for the Warcraft franchise. What's the next Warcraft game going to be? Because that's shaping up to have a very, very different storyline. Like, World of Warcraft, for me, never really matured in terms of its storylines. It keeps borrowing from the first, in particular Warcraft 3 as well. It's not even borrowed that heavily from Warcraft 1 and 2, really. It's ultimately kept digging up Warcraft 3 stuff. It never really... I mean, MOP was the only expansion where I think it ever tried to do its own thing, and that seemed to backfire on them. I mean, I was amazed when we defeated the Legion, actually properly defeated it. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was stunning. There's still plenty of people who can't believe it and won't believe it. That I still see comments about, oh, well, Sargeras isn't dead, he's only locked up, he could always escape, they could always let him out. And yeah, sure. I don't see what is the point, but or why they would allow it to happen. But nonetheless, yes, that possibility exists, and people are holding on to it as some sort of sliver of, well, if they realise they've made a mistake, they could always bring it back. Just like if we did kill off the old gods, it doesn't stop the Void Lords flinging some more our way. Could always repopulate Azeroth with more of them. At some point, they'll have to do a reset of the content and maybe even characters, move everything to classic type servers and make retail with new content at level 1. Well, that would be a new game though, wouldn't it, Ricklow? That would just be a new game. Whether that new game would be an MMO or not, I don't know. I've said before, it's struggle. I see it as a struggle for them to do another... I don't think they could do another World of Warcraft. I don't think they can do a World of Warcraft 2. I just don't think they'd get the funding for it. If they do another Warcraft game, it's got to be a different type of game, which actually would worry me. It would probably be light versus void rather than light versus fel. Well, the fel, I mean, the fel is like demon stuff, isn't it? That's gone. Also, but there's no, at the moment, I don't know where we are with the light thing. I don't know where we are with Naru after Zera's little indiscretion. I don't know where we sit in terms of are the Naru, because we see the Naru in a different light now, don't we? After the events on Argus, as maybe not all that benevolent after all. They're just a little bit kinder in their manipulation of us. Sargeras' redemption story. Well, Christmas, now here's the thing, and this is why I have to warn about spoilers, because I thought this might come up. Maybe he's already had it, all right? Because this is what confused the hell out of me about Sargeras. That whole end cinematic, with defeat Argus, and they grab him out, they turn, he's in the cloud, And they grab him, and he's going, no! And what does he do? He doesn't get out his... Because that's not his sword that's stuck in Silithus. Well, it's his, obviously. But it's not his actual sword, you know, the one he's known for. The one he splits planets in two with. It's not that. It's like, for him, probably a dagger. You know, he's got this thing out and he's stabbed it in. Has he done it because... Maybe, I mean, you have to wonder to yourself, at what point, you know, in that cloud, was he already able? Was he already rethinking the situation? Was he already contemplating the idea that old gods could be defeated and therefore there was no need to kill Azeroth? Had he already changed his mind a little bit? I don't know. But even if not, what's that last action about? He knows he's not going to complete his mission by doing it. All he's doing is, from our point of view, weakening the Titan that now, you know, has zero chance of being destroyed. Has he done it to help? Has he actually done it to help us against the old gods? I don't know. It's all really weird. So there might be more Sargeras story to come in Battle for Azeroth. Maybe. Only maybe. Blizz will probably bring their titles to mobiles. Now, this is what I feared. I was talking about this some time ago, and I had this huge fear that that's exactly what they were going to do. So I was amazed when they said for Battle for Azeroth they were going to be scaling back all the mission table stuff, because I saw that mission table stuff as being a way of moving certain parts of the game to mobile anyway, because the mobile app was actually better for doing your missions than being live in game. Like, hi Vane, for example, on the mobile app, if I've got a follower and I've just dinged it up or something like that, and I can equip now a follower item, a champion equipment, on the mobile app, I can just browse through all the champion equipment pieces I have available. When I'm in the game, I have to go through my bags and my bank and all sorts of shit to try and work out which they are. There's no menu or anything like that where I can just see which ones are available. So the mobile app is actually better for doing that sort of stuff than in-game. And I just thought, yeah, they're going to be doing more and more stuff like that, testing it out. And I did seriously fear, I still sort of do, but less so, that the next Warcraft game would be for mobile. Because it's an emerging market. The only saving grace, I think Blizzard is a company that is not as motivated, at the moment anyway, by money as might otherwise be the case, because their products are quite profitable anyway. You know, they do pretty well with them. And also, as they showed with Project Titan, if something doesn't look like it's shaping up, they're quite prepared to just chuck it in the bin. They don't just go out with what is a bad product. So, but yeah, the idea of because I mean, I wouldn't play that at all. I have no interest in mobile games at all, and I don't care. You know, if that is the next Warcraft, then I just simply will not play it. He targeted Silithus. It wasn't a coincidence where it landed. I don't know. The Silithus thing may have been, because obviously, you know, it had to be somewhere in reach of his right arm while he's been pulled back. So I'm not sure about that. Maybe there was some, because I mean, I thought that the event would re-trigger a Cthulhu type event. That doesn't seem to have happened yet. And then again, this also then comes back to the issue of what's happened with... Because at the moment, there's only really, you know, Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron we've come up against. But in the official lore, we haven't killed them. But then maybe that's in some doubt now, because we certainly haven't heard from them since. I mean, we've had cataclysms since both of those events. And that was supposed to be old gods whispering type thing. But that could have just been entirely in Zoth, couldn't it? I don't know. It happened to target the one zone that's really boring. I love Silithus. What are you on about? It was one of my favourite zones, even before it was expanded. It was, you know, it was a zone I quite liked, and there wasn't actually that much in it, but what there was pretty interesting. I've always liked Silithus as a zone. You're pretty sure they aren't dead? They're not supposed to be dead. Yeah, they're not supposed to be dead in the lore. It's just that that's the pre-Warcraft Chronicles lore. Actually, that's not quite true now, because I suppose, yeah, Warcraft Chronicles 3 will have covered that. But I haven't read that far yet. The problem was, by the time I got Warcraft Chronicles 3, I was then super busy and I've not had time to read it through yet. So I haven't actually read a lot of it. So I need to do that. When you say mobile game, you mean a cross-platform game like Diablo 3 on mobiles and PCs too. The issue there isn't that, like, see, Diablo 3 for me, I wouldn't like it has limited playability for me, Diablo 3, because I'm not that interested in the endgame stuff, because it's just repetitive. And also, like, even Elder Scrolls Online, which I was streaming last night, which I like as a game in many, many ways, but one of the things I don't like it is the unnecessarily difficult way of accessing functions within the game, because it's designed to be used on a console. And they didn't design a separate set of functions for the PC. Don't we see Cthulhu in the next raid anyway? No. We might... No? What do you mean, see Cthulhu? There's something called G'huun, which is not the same thing. That's something that has been created to mimic an old god. It's something that's actually been created by, I don't know, the Keepers or something. You're going to start ordering the Chronicles soon. Yeah, well, I mean, well, in theory, yeah, it's supposed to be the gold standard now, the definitive guide. But sometimes things happen that I think contradict a little bit, stuff that's already been in the Chronicles. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see how it all pans out. I haven't yet actually checked, because someone was telling me they'd opened up some new dungeons on the alpha, and they definitely hadn't on Saturday the last time I was on. And I thought, well, maybe they've just unlocked them. But I went on today and there weren't any more open either. So they're still taking the time on that as well. You can see his image in the background while fighting. Okay. Oh, I didn't actually do any of the raid testing. Do you mean on the raid test? In which case, remember that the particular raid we're going to be doing first, all dear, is a facility for... I didn't try the alpha, no. I didn't really feel there was any point, because the first raid test is always a bit of a washout. You don't really get to see anything. And... But yeah, if you see the image of Cthulhu in that raid area, you've got to bear in mind that's a facility designed for trying to find weapons to use against the old gods, which means that it's a bit like an image, you know. It's a bit like if you train someone to shoot squirrels and you make a model of a squirrel, it's not a real squirrel. It's the same thing, yeah, projections or just images or whatever. It's just, you know, it's not anything to do with them directly. Have I seen the guides for players who quit during vanilla and now people who quit during TBC? I saw Wowhead tweet something about the TBC one, but I had not actually seen them, no. I don't know what that series is about. It doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me. I can understand a beginner, like well, no, I don't see the sense in a returning. Well, I suppose. I mean, it doesn't make much difference, does it? So much has changed since Vanilla and TBC that does it make much difference which expansion you quit in? You know, the answer's going to be, oh, what's changed? Everything. Has there been any news on pre-expansion event? Yes, they did talk about that. The burning of Teldrassil is in the pre-expansion event, for which, and also, well, there seems to be a mount, like a hippogriff mount, which seems to be associated, or the Blizzard didn't confirm this, with that event. So that's certainly one of the events there. Not necessarily the only one, but, you know, the Battle of Lordaeron, as we've seen, is basically a post-expansion event. Because that's our scenario for when we first log in, when BfA, or when we're in, when BfA actually just goes live. So we're going to find ourselves doing that scenario, which will actually go really quickly with the full raid group. I was trying it, you know, I did it quite a lot of times, especially on the Horde side. It was buggy as hell, but it's quite buggy on both sides. So I had to do it quite a lot of times. And when you were doing it with like a raid group, it was so quick. And when you did it like 2 or 3 people, it didn't take that long. It wasn't that bad, but it was significantly slower. Will we get nice XP and items from the pre-Legion, like the pre-Legion Azeroth invasions? I think certainly we will. They haven't said specifically that, but I think it's almost certain, because not only was it actually a really good feature in the pre-Legion expansion event, but Blizzard said so. Blizzard said that actually it was really good, and they, you know, will want to do that again. So yeah, I think it's certain that they will. I mean, I don't necessarily know what form it will take, because it won't be like in, well, I don't know, will it? I mean, I suppose they could do it as invasions like the Legion invasions, except they're faction specific. So maybe as Alliance, there's a couple of places in the world where there are like what you might call alliance controlled areas where hordes start attacking, and maybe there are, for the Horde side, you know, horde controlled areas where you've got like NPCs, not an actual PvP situation, but, you know, alliance NPCs, and as Horde players, that's where you go to get your stuff. So I can see them doing something like that, definitely. But I'm certain, yes, there will be easy access to catch-up gear. So even your crappiest, freshly dinged character, which might only ding during the event itself, because like you say, if they open it up to really good experience from it, then it'll be a good opportunity to level up a character there, or finish leveling up a character. And then really quick, easy access to a load of gear, which, now I think about it, I'll be on holiday for, you know, they're likely to bring that pre-expansion event out once I've actually finished college for the summer. So actually it could be a really wow intensive summer for me. How many old gods left? There's yeah, well, so in terms of the Warcraft Chronicles, the named ones are, and you can't discount the fact there might be another, but the named ones are Cthulhu, was still around even though we've encountered, Yogg-Saron is still around even though we've encountered, and Zoth, who we haven't really directly encountered, Yasharaj, who Amanthul ripped it out, so he was largely, I mean, basically killed. Obviously there were little remnants left over the old Mr. Pandaria thing, but basically he's gone. And that's supposed to be it. So there's supposed to be 3 left alive and kicking, so to speak. But Zoth is the only one we haven't really faced off against in any serious way. That idea could work, and they could implement more PvP aspects to it for those who toggle on PvP. Yes, they could. There'd be nothing to stop PvP, you know, some sort of PvP system going on where if you go instead to where the NPCs are for your faction, you fight, and you can maybe get some rewards for having more mode on, certainly. But I mean, the thing at the moment is, I mean, this is what concerns me. The expansion at the moment is being hyped as this faction v faction thing because, you know, if you look at the content, so we're going to have this burning of Teldrassil before the expansion. You've got the siege of Lordaeron after the expansion. You know, on the Alliance side, you break out of a prison. That's a load of rubbish. But on the Horde side, you break into a prison in Stormwind. So there's that as well. You've got islands where, again, it's Horde versus Alliance. Because even when you do it PvE mode, you've got Horde NPCs against you. You've got Warfronts, which, again, even though it's against NPCs, is still supposed to be a faction thing. So, hi, Ace. It's going quite well, thank you. It's... you know, I can well understand someone who, if I was banging on about old gods in BfA, was going, don't be silly, everything is pointing towards faction v faction, and you're just grasping at straws, hoping you're going to get some old god stuff. But the reality is that the heart of Azeroth just basically demonstrates loud and clear that it's all a red herring, you know. For whatever reason, I'm sure there is a reason for it. I mean, I don't mean it's a red herring as in it's just something they've created deliberately to throw us off the scent, but it's not the real big thing in the expansion. You know, the last boss of the expansion is not going to be an Alliance or a Horde character. You know, it's not. It's not going to be Sylvanas. It's not going to be Anduin or anyone like... I mean, they're not going to kill Anduin off anyway. I don't think even they're going to kill Sylvanas off. It's not going to be any of that. It's going to be something old god related. I mean, you know, Illyria as well, like I was saying. The whole Illyria as a void and the Void Elves thing, what's that about? That made, you know, no sense in Legion. It had no bearing on the Legion story. It's clearly something being set up for something else. Remember the Island of Thunder unlocking that took weeks of daily quests? Yes, I do. What if they make it like that for raids too? One faction gets early access to raids. You can't do that because, again, of this... You know, even though Blizzard are introducing faction-specific raid achievements, people will still view the World First as the most prestigious title. Whether Blizzard officially, you know, support that or not. Could Greymane possibly be killed off? Greymane is killable. Yeah, in terms of all the major characters, I think Greymane is killable. I think they, you know, there's certain characters I don't think they'd kill them off. They're too big. I don't think Greymane is too big. In fact, he's so reckless, it's amazing he hasn't been killed off already. He could certainly be killed off, yes. Like Anduin, I don't think they really can. There's not too many on the Alliance side I think are safe, actually. Warfronts are unlocking access to possibly world bosses and quests. Yeah, I don't know what their ultimate plans are for Warfronts. Didn't they say they didn't either? Greymane's a snake. No, he's a wolf. What have you got against Greymane? Hi, Geckos. He's upset that his son was killed by Sylvanas. What Horde equivalent could you kill off? The problem with the Horde leaders is most of them are too minor to be worthwhile. They're like, see, someone like Greymane, I think he could be killed off, but it would also have a certain amount of gravitas. You could kill him and it would be fairly major. I can't think of a Horde equivalent. You know, no one would care about killing the Goblin guy off. I mean, the Blood Elf Lorthamar, is it? He could be killed off. I don't think he's too big to be killed off. But again, does he have the right gravitas? Nathanos, see, I don't know about Nathan. Not being a Horde player, I don't know just how important he is. I mean, he's not really. He's he's a right-hand man, isn't he? He's not quite on the same level as Greymane. Hi, Adrian. Besides Vulpera, what is the one race you would never want to see as playable? We all know the answer to that one. Unfortunately, it is playable. But every time when I try to go to sleep, I close my eyes and pretend they're not. What about Bane? He's a bit of an irrelevance, isn't he? I mean, you know, again, I don't necessarily always have the best view of the Horde leaders because I played Horde for like 1 year, about half a year in Wrath and very casually, and then 1 year crossing WoD with Legion. But Bane just seems to be very minor to me. In fact, he's so minor that, again, spoilers, in the battle for Lordaeron scenario, he's just pushed around. You know, he doesn't seem to stand up for himself at all. Sourfang, I don't think he's too big to be killed off. In fact, I thought he had been killed off when I did the scenario. So no, I don't think he's too big to be killed off. But at the same time, I would think it a bit strange to not kill him off when we could have done at the start of the expansion, only to kill him off later on. I mean, it's possible. I'm alright, Pinky, you? Magatha Grimtoten. Wasn't she the one who played the dirty on Kane? Or am I thinking of someone else? Didn't she poison Garrosh's axe? Or was that different? Well, in that case, she's not really the greatest leader of the Tauren, is she? She's a bit of a traitor. No, I have a shaman. I don't. I mean, there ought to be a certain amount of continuity as well. I don't think it necessarily has helped the Horde with any sort of identity, constantly chopping and changing leaders. I don't think that's helped at all. Whereas the Alliance have largely remained the same. You know, there's not been that as much difference, really. I mean, Anduin started World of Warcraft as King of Stormwind, and he's King of Stormwind again. I mean, that's just full circle. I mean, Magni's still about. He's obviously, you know, got higher things on his mind. But by and large, it's remained fairly stable. There certainly hasn't been a lot of rocking of the boat as a result of it. Whereas Horde, I mean, they've gone through, like, they've gone to their 4th war chief now in World of Warcraft. And that's just the war chief of the Horde, you know. Tauren, trolls and orcs have all lost leaders. You don't like Magni? Why don't you like Magni? He's the ultimate nice guy. He's even helping the Horde. Giving the Horde those necklaces. He's the new Khadgar, by the looks of it. Only he's not as chatty. And he doesn't make us collect crystals. Because, let's face it, he's got plenty of crystals of his own. Doesn't need our help for them. Too much like Khadgar. Well, I noticed he's taken a backseat, as I think he had to. I mean, I thought there was a danger with Khadgar of becoming too much like the narrator of the whole game for players who maybe only started playing from WoD. Doesn't make us collect crystals yet. No, it's not going to. We're collecting Azerite, and that, I mean, that's the other good thing about Azerite compared to artifact power, because, you know, you don't have to sort of assign it to different pieces. It just, when you collect it, it just automatically goes onto your neck. There's no physical item to clog up your bags or anything like that. That's way better. Yes, when Khadgar made us collect crystals but only needed one of them. Yes. Nether shards. Nether shards are just types of crystals. Everything's crystals that Khadgar wanted. He never asked us for anything that wasn't a crystal. I mean, that's mages for you. So, I mean, it's... I mean, at the moment we're looking at, it's like just over a week since PAX. They said within the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's likely to be, I think I'm pretty sure that's what they actually said, likely to be going into beta, which they also said would be feature complete. So since then, all they really do, okay, they're going to put a test on for Warfronts, and they've put in more Azerite armour, even though they've taken away a row of traits from it. We did steal some of his hair. What, we stole some of Khadgar's hair? I don't remember that then. Did we? I can't remember that. Anyone else hoping that Zandalari trolls and Cultural ally races will start at 110? Yeah, that will be a vain hope. They will start at level 20. I know what you mean, because that would also mean you'd have to start them in Azeroth Eastern Kingdoms, and how does that make sense? But that's where they will be. Starting at such a high level as 110 is something only for like hero class type things. Have they shown any more interesting traits to do with the armour? No. Not that I have seen anyway. I mean, I can't swear that no one has data mined any, but I'm pretty sure I've seen it on Wowhead if they had. So, no, I think what we've seen so far is what we've got. In fact, it's less than what they've got, because I say they've taken a whole row this week compared with the first build where they threw them out. Oh, it's for an alchemy quest. If it was an alchemy quest, I may have done it, because I've done the alchemy quest. I have an alchemist. I may just have forgotten about it. Your guess is it's going to be rep locked. What, the allied races? They'll certainly be rep locked. All of them. That's the thing with allied races. They're always rep locked. As well as, because you have to do, for all the allied races, you need a reputation that's associated with them. You need to complete some lore master type achievements that are associated with them before you can unlock them, the scenario to get them. So that's why there's no point in bringing them out at the start, because you're going to need a certain amount of time to get that exalted rep and to get the achievements done anyway. I mean, they might just bring it out in like 8.1. Is the Azerite gear going to be strictly PvE based? I did mention they didn't mention any PvP. But I don't really keep my finger on the pulse of PvP. I don't know whether they'll treat it like legendaries in that it just doesn't work in PvP. That would seem a bit harsh, but I don't know. So I haven't heard them say anything about it. But like I say, I you know, sometimes when they say things about PvP, it can easily just sort of gloss over me. Do I plan to get the Underlight Angler before BfA? Yes, I do actually. It's not top priority because it'll still be available after BfA. But I have a bit of a... It is sort of on one of my tentative lists of things if I manage to get everything else done. Because with... I mean, it'd be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Because in terms of PvP gear... So there's the usual ways to get it in. I don't think they're removing any ways to get it in BfA, but they're adding ways to get it because you can get it in World PvP by filling up the bar. Now, and then they said when you've got the set, then you'd move on to the next one. Now that set, would that just include normal helm, chest and shoulders, or would it include some Azeroth pieces? I don't know. You want the field medic type from first aid. Well, that shouldn't be too hard to get anyway. I mean, I don't have that yet, but that's because I can't be bothered. I will eventually get it. You have the angler, you just don't know whether you want to get the different variants through the rep grind. I mean, it's one of those things. Rep grind is one of those things you can always just do a bit at a time until you're bored and then stop doing it and then maybe pick it up. And if you get it done, you get it done. If you don't, you don't. But as far as I'm aware, that the angler are none of the content's been removed in Battle for Azeroth, so I think you can just get it whenever. Which Mage Tower skins you're going after before they're gone? I've got them. I don't care about any others. I may do some others, or I may not. I really don't care. But I have now the prot one for Paladins. It might be in my interest, just for because I'm a paladin, to get the Holy One while I'm at it, but it's not a priority. If I don't get it, I don't get it. I don't really like it. I don't like the concept of a big old hammer. It's not something I would ever use for Transmog. I prefer for Holy a one-hander and a shield. That's my look for Holy. That's what I want. So I would never actually use the Mage Tower or any other. In fact, actually, at the moment, if you see me in Holy mode on live, I actually have my Silver Hand transmogged to the level 20 hammer, two-hander, which looks very nice, but it's really weedy. And I've done that deliberately to make it look pathetic because I do not like the Silver Hand. It just looks like a shiny version of the Doom Hammer from the films, the Warcraft movie. Do I think I'm going to get the new title, Top 100 Mythic Kill, in the first... I'm not, unless I'm in a different guild. I certainly won't with the guild I'm in at the moment. You want the SV1 on your Hunter just to have all three, but SV is so nasty. The only thing I would say, sorry, coming back to that Echoes, is I noticed there's quite a lot of long-established alliance guilds going Horde for BfA. Now, whether they are... Wouldn't it be ironic if doing that ended up stuffing them over? The problem is, though, it can sort of work both ways. If, let's say, you get 5 or 10 long-established, decent alliance guilds go Horde for BfA, and then it turns out that actually whatever Blizzard are going to do, which might be based around these achievements to redress the balance, works, they're going to feel a little bit silly because now they're giving themselves a harder time of it. They won't achieve either of their objectives for going Horde, which is 1, recruitment, and 2, giving themselves a better chance of getting the ranks. Or, if loads and loads of alliance guilds go Horde, it might well be that whatever Blizzard decide to put in place to redress the balance ends up just being like putting one line of sandbags against a flood. You know, in other words, it won't be enough. So I don't know. It depends how many are going. But I can't imagine that if there's lots of Alliance guilds planning to go Horde, that all of their players would be able to do that. So some may choose instead just to move to other Alliance guilds, in which case a guild like mine might benefit from that. It's difficult to say. It's very... all this Horde and Alliance thing for raiding for the next expansion is very up in the air. And I don't think Blizzard are doing the community any sort of favours by delaying talking about what they say. You know, when they said at PAX, we're running through some ideas, but we're not going to talk about it yet. That was an appalling thing to say, because people are already making the decision to change faction, and it's not very fair to do that without having all the relevant information. 383 world is top 100 Alliance. Well, that's no good, is it? Far, far worse than that. You wish the holy weapon could be transmog for ret. There are some very, very strange transmog options at the moment in the alpha. To be fair, Blizzard themselves have said they haven't worked it all out yet. So I believe, for example, as a ret, you can transmog the warrior weapon, like, you know, or one of the warrior weapons. Although sometimes I just have to be careful, because sometimes it looks like you can transmog something, but you can't. So, for example, I was creating a warrior on the alpha to make one of the title slides, and I noticed in my transmog options, it was given as a Fury warrior, it was giving me the option to transmog Ashbringers. I thought, oh, dual Ashbringers. Oh yeah, I've got to have that. But it turns out you can't do it. So you can assign it in your transmog thing, but when you try and apply it, it won't do it. There's no message that comes up saying, no, you can't do it. It just gives the same sound as you would get if it had applied it. It just doesn't apply it. So yeah, at the moment, the transmog with artifact weapons is in flux. They don't really know what they're doing. They've said so themselves. They haven't decided on what their rules are going to be. £27 per character is a scam. That's just for the faction transfer, isn't it? But if you think about it this way, if you're in a raiding guild and you're going to faction transfer to Horde, you're not going to stay on the same server either, because, you know, you'd go to a Horde server. You will presumably be on an Alliance-dominated server. You know, if you're the sort of guild that's going to move or change faction to improve your ability to recruit and do raids, you would already have chosen the more suitable server anyway. So then you would need, yeah, another £19. That's what I mean. It costs, you know, it costs quite a lot, really. It costs about as much as the expansion just to effectively move one, and that's one character. Bear in mind, a lot of Mythic Raiders are likely to have 2 or 3 other characters, even if it's just for trade out, something like that, or ones you play about now and again. You know, you can soon get to a position where, you know, for me, if I were to transfer, oh God, I don't even like to think what it costs to transfer all mine. Even if I just transferred the ones who are worth transferring, some of them you might just think, because it'd cost less to make yourself a new character on that new realm and level boost it. So unless they happen to have something on that character, and bear in mind transmog isn't an issue, or mounts, because they're account wide anyway. So unless it's something like professions or patterns, something like that, unless there's something very special about that character, you're better off not transferring it, but just creating a new one on a new realm and level boosting it. Yes, Christums, that's exactly what I was talking about before. There is indeed. So if you go, that is the issue that guilds my guild's discussing it, and all guilds will be discussing potentially at the moment, unless they already happen to be on one of these servers. Do we move to a larger population server, like one of the big boys? You've got a larger pool of players to recruit from. That's always appealing. But equally, you've got less of a commitment from those players. Those players can easily move guilds or be poached from your guild or headpunted, whatever you want to call it, for no cost, so it's much easier. So it's a double-edged sword, really. I mean, the other thing as well is in terms of visibility. You know, you can be on a middle or mediocre to low realm, and you might be like realm 4th or 5th. So there's a certain visibility there for the people on your realm. Whereas you might move to one of the big realms and all of a sudden, even as a cutting-edge mythic raiding guild, you're like realm 30th or something. So all of a sudden then, people on that realm don't really know you. Well, you know, you're 30th. I wouldn't even know you. Unless you get a name for something. But guilds in position 30th who get a name for themselves is not usually for a good reason. Current server's the only one marked for new players. Yes, that's usually the kiss of death, isn't it? That's usually a bad sign. Because new players are the only ones who are potentially naive enough to actually set up camp in one of those wholly unsuitable servers. Well, possibly the way they're thinking about it as well is if they're a new player who just wants to play the game casually, hi Frozen, then it might be suitable because, you know, they can play the game, not so much hassle, yada, yada, yada. If they end up deciding they want to get into more serious forms of the game, then they'll realise they'll have to realm transfer, then they get a bit more money out of them. So, you know, it's a good plan. What is different about the servers? Why do they exist? Hang on, what servers? Why do what servers exist? Just so we're clear. New player servers. They don't, I mean, they're not new servers. They're just players with low population that they recommend to new players. You know, from the game's point of view, like an actually new player is likely to have a better experience on a low pop realm, to be fair, because they'll never come across any queues or anything like that to log into the server. You know, there'll be some people about because of the sharding technology, but there'll never be, you know, you're not going to get lost in the crowd. And if, as I say, they end up becoming a serious player later on, then they can, you know, they'll pay for a realm transfer. So the new player realms they're not new realms, they're just realms that are low pop, that they want to put them in. So they're just trying to encourage, because they don't want to remove realms. Removing realms is, I think it's a PR thing, because it looks bad. Because what happens in an MMO, that, you know, they usually close realms down and merge when it means they're losing players, and it might give that signal. So they'd rather just connect realms instead, because then they don't have to close them down, but it amounts to the same thing. It also, I suppose, means they don't force people into renaming their characters. You're curious as to what the next hero class is going to be. Hopefully none at all. We have too many classes. Far too many classes already. They should stop. However, they may not stop because, like Blizzard themselves have said, they said, "Oh, when it, we make new classes when it makes sense to the story." But what if they do make another class? It should be one that's a ranged DPS spec, no melee, and not even one that can be ranged and melee. It should be pure ranged. End of story. But even then, there's too many already. 12 is too many. I mean, in a mythic raid group, you cannot even have 2 of every class. That's how bad it's got. I remember in vanilla, you had 5 of every class in your raid. A balanced raid have 5 of every class. You can't even have 2 now. People stop going on about a Tinkerer. A Tinkerer would clearly be melee. Not having it. That can be a rogue spec. They can get rid of subtlety and make it Tinkerer or something. Blizz could just allow cross-server. Yeah, but then they'd lose money on transfers. What about a Bard? I don't think it really fits the World of Warcraft combat system. You know, to have what would be largely a support class doesn't really fit. I mean, some RPG systems go for it. World of Warcraft wouldn't, because they just go for the Holy Trinity. You want to hope that someone comes up with a decent like Dungeons and Dragons Online game, not the actual Dungeons and Dragons Online, because that was, I tried that one time, that was god awful. I couldn't get into it at all. You wouldn't mind condensing the specs. I wouldn't mind condensing the specs. I don't think if the current designers could go back that they would think it was a good idea to have multiple specs like that. A Game of Thrones MMO? No. I mean, I've never watched Game of Thrones or anything, but it doesn't sound to me... It sounds to me like it's more of a character-driven story than, you know, people's or events or anything like that. So I don't think that really suits an MMO. More a single player if they're doing anything at all. I mean, even Lord of the Rings Online pushed it in terms of, you know, the classes you could have, because it's the only fantasy MMO where you can't have a wizard. It's quite ironic, really, when every other fantasy role-playing game, or almost every other fantasy role-playing game, has been derived or inspired very heavily by Tolkien. It is ironic that the one MMO that's based very much on his work, you can't have wizards, because of course that's, you know, doesn't work. They should have made a Mass Effect MMO instead of Star Wars: The Republic. No, we must always have a Star Wars MMO because I require lightsabers. Did Blizzard make a mistake making Demon Hunters leathers instead of mail? They did actually talk about this, interestingly enough. You could sort of tell from the way they were discussing it, they really wanted to make them male users. But, and I think I agree with them, when you look at it, you actually can't do it. You know, from a game design point of view, it would have been much better for them to be male users. However, they're clearly not. You know, you look at Illidan, there could even be an argument for making them clothies. You know, but the idea of a cloth tank was obviously a bit beyond the pale. You certainly cannot put them above... Leather is pushing it. They're half naked, for goodness sake. You know, they have less armour than any other class in the game. So there was no way it could be male realistically. But it does create a problem. I mean, the personal loot situation creates a big problem. Hunters and Shaman, unless you happen to have loads of them in your raid, are going to struggle for gear. They're not going to be able to trade very much between them. I mean, if you think about it, you've got in a mythic raid, let's say, or let's say any raid where you've got 20 people. So if you've got 4 different armor classes, that means to be balanced, you ideally want 5 of each type. Now, you're very likely to have at least 5 leather users. So the leather users have got a good chance of getting gear up fairly quickly. There's a pretty decent chance of having at least 5 cloth users, so they should be okay. Mail users, very low chance. Plate users also, it's not great, but you can imagine a situation with... what could you have? You'd have a Holy Paladin. I mean, you're unlikely to have a Warrior, a DK and a Ret, but you might have at least 2 of them in your DPS. And you might have, say, 1 plate tank. So there's a decent chance, I would say, 4. I mean, some, obviously, rosters would have 5. But I think, you know, you're talking 3 or 4 plate, probably, for BfA. But for male, you might only be talking 2 or 3 in a typical roster. Monk down to cloth. No, I think monk suits leather. I mean, they could just get rid of mail, if that's what you're talking about. Disney might pull the plug on their partnership and ban them from using the Star Wars license. Yes, they could. Disney have been a little bit upset with EA. That being said, I don't think they can just pull the plug whenever they like. You know, when you buy a license from someone, only an idiot would buy a license from someone that could be pulled at any moment. There will be it's like a rental, isn't it? You've got a certain amount of time on your contract. And EA apparently have announced, or, well, someone said, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently there's another expansion coming. So they must feel sure that they've got a good couple of years at least out of it still on their contract. You don't see much point in having mail. Yes, I mean, I agree. Hunters and shamans could easily change to a different type of armor. In which case, I could see a rebalancing, and that's a really good idea, actually. Hunters leather. I would still tend to say shaman's leather, but you could move demon hunters to cloth. What else would be better as cloth? I mean, monks, you could. Or do light, medium, heavy armor thing, yeah. Yeah, light, medium, heavy would work in that case. Again, you used to play Marvel Heroes got axed because Disney pulled the license that they had till 20... There must have been some reason, because you don't just... a contract... Unless they were just... whoever drew up the contract on Marvel, the publishers of Marvel's Heroes, was basically a dumbass. You would want a guarantee of a certain amount of time. I mean, there's usually conditions where if, like, a contract's breached, then they get to pull it early. Like if it's not making, you know, for whatever reason, but you've got a contract. They can't just, if you've got a contract that says you've got it up to such and such a date, then that's what you've got. But that's up to your solicitors to make sure that you've got the contract that's going to mean you can guarantee to make your money. Rebalancing would be a bad idea by making demon hunters male fix the thing, but it doesn't. Like they said, it doesn't sit right them being male wearers. They don't look, they've never ever looked like they belong in male. You could make a much stronger argument for cloth over male. If the issue is we need more male users, fair enough, and there isn't anyone from the leather camp that would suit male. That's the bottom line. There's a couple you could argue could drop down to cloth, but there aren't any you could promote to male. There aren't any plate users that you could downgrade to male. If there was any at all, it would ironically be the warrior. But even that wouldn't make sense. But that would make the most sense. So they have got themselves into a bit of a mess. Just purely down to a lack of thought when they've introduced new classes. I mean, they've introduced classes. Basically, it's one of these things that they do to sell an expansion. You know. I don't know why they can't just sell the expansion based on the new content. You know, I think that's plenty good enough. But, you know, they know what they're like. They feel they have to have lots and lots of things. Quality over quantity over quality. Even though we know it's a quality games developer, it's a bit maddening, really. It's like their lack of foresight in terms of 2 million melee and not enough range. Absolutely. I mean, that's the madness of the whole situation, is that on most fights, you know, you're absolutely fine with a decent balance of melee and ranged. And you're generally okay if you've got a bit more melee than ranged as well. But you're never okay if you've got a proportional amount of melee and ranged compared to the number of classes. And also, there are more fights that, even when you're sort of okay with the balance, often you are still better with ranged. So the consequence is that it's more competitive as a melee player because you have to be better. Hi, Jordan. I mean, I've heard no end of, you know, I've known no end of people who've been a melee player, switched to a ranged class, and then found themselves all of a sudden being able to get into guilds hundreds of ranks ahead because it's much less competitive. And if you are able to play one of the very much in demand classes such as Warlock or Mage, then, you know, you're onto a good thing. Coven's an extreme example, I think. I do think Coven is an extreme example. And most fights, thankfully, are not like that. What do I think of the GM in BfA servers, where he came online as a Vulpera Horde? I missed that then. I didn't know about that. That's just winding people up. It's not happening. We're not getting. They're not going to have Vulpera allied race. It's been a ludicrous thing since someone said, "I know. What about gnomes?" You like dungeons as range, but raids as melee. See, I prefer it the other way around. I don't mind being melee in dungeons. Well, I don't mind it in raids, obviously, I play it. But what I mind is the fact that you have to be... It's extra competition for your space. You can easily end up having to be out for someone who's not as good at the mechanics, just because, you know... Like, Agrimar, they've now changed, so you can actually afford to have more melee now. But before, you couldn't. You had to have 10 players that the game recognised as ranged players. Otherwise, you'd end up with those mechanics happening in melee, which was a pain in the ass. It's an encounter design issue. It is an encounter design issue, but the thing is, the encounter design team keep being told, especially since Mythic, that they should basically not deny themselves any cool mechanics that they can think of. So... And like they've said in BfA, there's going to be some coordination between the encounter and the class design team, which should have been the case from day one. It's baffling. The fact that they will come out and basically say that, I mean, there's two really surprising things come out of Legion when it comes to game design. One is when we always knew there was no real coordination between the different teams because it's obvious, we didn't need to be told that. But when you are told that, it's just, wow, bloody hell. And then when we found out in Tomb of Sargeras that there wasn't even coordination within the same team, when we were basically told that the different encounter designers just working on different bosses weren't even coordinated between each other. Hi, C-Web. That was... Something else. That was next level. What the hell are you doing? Have you got no leadership at all in this team? Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. I mean, for example, where I work in a college. So, and each area has a manager, a leader, who obviously, so there's a certain amount of coordination inherent within the whole management structure of the college. But in addition to that, individuals off their own bat, where they need some information from another department, will go and talk to people. Like if I've got a student who I've got some concerns about, I will go to another area to see their other teachers and talk about them just off my own bat. So the fact that not only was that not happening, but that there wasn't even a system in place to ensure it happened was just bizarre. You know, Blizzard are a big company. Actually, as companies go, they're not that big. As games studios go, okay, because they are a big game studio. But as companies go, they're not that big. They should easily be able to have a decent management structure. I think sometimes where it comes from is when you consider that the management structure at Blizzard, without me being an expert on it, basically derives from people who were working in their bedrooms making games and ended up doing a really good job of making games and ended up being managers of this huge company without necessarily any management getting anyone in. You know, they didn't exactly send anyone off to Harvard Business School to learn how to cope with such a large organization. So sometimes, you know, they can end up getting really basic things wrong. You work in an environment where your lack of communication between departments allows you to have excuses for failures. Oh dear. Overall bloat issue. Lots of specs to account for, lots of armor classes, lots of things to have to design 36 specs around. Yes. It is. It is. I mean, you know, it's too many classes. There's certainly too many specs in the game, and also this insistence that Blizzard have of designing for unique specs isn't helping. And especially as Ian Hazakostas agreed, he said, yeah, actually some of these things should be class-wide, not for specs, you know, in terms of utility, and they haven't done that. So he said, like, so I mean, that again leads me to one of two conclusions. Either Ian Hazakostas was, well, one of three, let's say. Either he was lying. Well, I don't think he was lying, to be fair. You know, I think, you know, these Q&As are his idea. I don't think he goes on to lie. I think he might be economical with the truth sometimes, but I think, you know, he's telling the truth in terms of, to a certain extent. Second, that he's completely changed his mind since then. Or third, that no one's listening to him in the teams. He's saying, actually, yeah, they were right about this, we should do this. And people are basically going, yes, Ian, yeah, we'll sort it, don't you worry. You go back and sit in your armchair, we'll sort it, and then do nothing about it at all. Because I've known people like that in my, you know, in various places I've worked as well, that when a manager comes in and says, right, we're going to do this thing, blah, 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 the canny ones who don't want to do it, like idiots like me who see the problems with it, will point out all sorts of problems, and then the manager will say, no, we're going to do it, and you'd better do it as well. So I mean, the canny ones go, oh, what a great idea, that's fantastic, yeah, yeah, we'll do that. And then they just don't do it. But because they were so supportive of it, no one checks that they're doing it because, you know, they thought it was a great idea. Why wouldn't they do it? Whereas me, who comes out, that's a dog turd of an idea, I get checked up on all the time to make sure I'm actually doing it. That's why personal loot is such a win. You can have any armor type you want. No, that's why it's a lose. That is why it's a lose. Because in a raid, right, let's just quickly work something out. So in my guild, for example, we have got our tanks at the moment, or actually technically that's changed because our Brewmaster's leaving. But okay, when we were killing Argus, Brewmaster tank, Guardian Druid tank, 2 leather wearers. Healers, we had a boomkin. We may have had two. No, we had one boomkin that night, so that's the third one there. 2 rogues, 5. Resto druid is what I actually meant to say before for boomkin, but we have a boomkin as well. So that's 6 leather wearers there. What else wears leather? Oh, we had another monk. So 7 leather wearers, unless I'm forgetting something. At least 7 leather wearers, put it that way. So a third of the raid group were leather wearers. So that means you're going to get, on average, more leather armour pieces dropping, which by the time people are able to trade them with each other, that's going to continue. Those leather wearers are going to gear up quicker than, say, male. What did we have? 1 hunter and 1 shaman. We had an enhancement shaman. 2 male wearers out of the whole 20-man raid. How quickly are they going to gear up, having to help each other out? Not very quickly. You wish hunters could dual wield small crossbows. No, I've got a better idea for that. There's a video I still keep meaning to do, and I haven't got round to it yet. I should have got round to it over Easter. But, you know. Not talking about silly... It's not... Item trading isn't silly. That is how you're going to get a lot of your gear. Item trading is how you're going to get a lot of your gear. You cannot expect to get the gear you want. Sharing and sharing, you know, share and share alike is the way to do it. Yeah, but the issue is, Earth, we were talking about that. If hunters and shamans wear leather, which you can see, then you end up with even more leather wearers. You could potentially drop demon hunters down to cloth. After that, you're struggling a little bit. And then plates would be, you know, buggered. Because what would you have for plate? You've got 3 classes only doing within plates. Need to get rid of loot trading. They will never get rid of loot trading. Ever. It was the sugar that helped the medicine of personal loot go down. For pugs and guilds alike. The fact that it's tradable, you know, see, the thing is, there's never going to be a massive backlash about this removal of master loot because there are enough people mad about it to form a backlash. If they stopped personal loot being tradable, that would affect a massive number of people. That affects everyone. From, you know, the very casual all the way up to the very hardcore. And there would be a massive kickoff about that. Only 2 classes that can tank using a one-handed shield. Well, I mean, the thing, again, that's just what's happened with all this class bloat in the first place. Initially, realistically, warriors were your tanks. Then in TBC... they sort of gave some sensible tools to paladins and druids, but even then you would largely use a paladin for most. Druids had their uses on certain things, but mostly you would use a paladin. But then, of course, you know, they added Death Knights, and then they've added monks, now they've added demon hunters. So they've added all these extra classes of tanks that block with their face, to the point where now the idea of the shield wearing tank, which used to be ubiquitous, is now rare. Honestly think that if getting a piece of loot that you can use to get power for your character would hurt the game. Sorry, Kisashi, you might have to rephrase that. I don't know what that means. But I agree with Safi in saying their trading is also, just from a moral point of view, yeah, in terms of it's an MMO. MMO as a social structure, there's got to be, there's team play at work there, and sharing is an important part of that. Just run an all druid guild, problem solved. Well, it wouldn't have to be an all druid guild. It could just be an all leather guild. That would then also allow you to have, you know, limited range, actually, now that I think about it. The range would effectively just be boomkins. You would struggle for health stones and gateways. But as an armour type, the leather contingency is, of course, by far the most powerful now. Am I going to race change to culture on human now? Any news for Azerite armour? Not yet, no. There again, you know, you would think there's probably going to be another build this week. If they're really gearing up for beta and they weren't just lying about that at PAX, then there must be a build. You would think there'd be like one more build of alpha and then into beta, I would guess. In which case there must be quite a bit coming with this alpha. Unless they just want to wait for beta and then just release it all. I don't know. Apparently now well, I so know apparently about it. I went out today. They have done something since Friday's build, because on Saturday when I was going around, 119 was still the level cap, but now you can get experience at 119, so you can now get to 120. So they've done something. Without loot train, you think raiding would die out? It's not, I mean, they wouldn't get away with it. If Blizzard tried to do it, they wouldn't get, you know, there's certain things that the community just will not stand for. And that's one of them. They will not stand for the fact you can't trade loot. The fact that you can only trade it if you already have a piece that's equal or higher item level is about as far as they can push the community on that one. Would getting a piece of loot that you can turn into dust to use to empower other pieces of gear so you can get more power hurt the game? I don't think people would accept that either, Kasasha. I quite like the idea of empowering bits of gear with other bits of gear that you would otherwise discard. But that's an idea for a completely new game. I don't think it's the sort of thing they could get away with bringing into World of Warcraft. If you need nothing and can't help others get geared, your incentive to raid goes down. It does indeed. Yes, win the Titan Forge lottery. That's what they hope for. An all leather and cloth guild gives you more variety. Well, an all leather mail plate and cloth guild gives you the most variety. But I agree, if you decided to ignore the mail and plate wearing classes, you would not necessarily do badly. Ah, mind you, that being said, I think now. Hold on. Ah, no, I need to log on to the alpha. Because, of course, there's the class buffs that you may do without. Because the warrior gets one that buffs, I think it might buff strength and agility, oddly enough. Is it just strength? Who gives the agility then? Because obviously then, if you were just going to go with leather and cloth, you could do without 10% strength. Yeah, I know mages are the intellect ones. Is it hunt? It's not, is it? No, it's not. Warriors isn't strength. I didn't think it was. Warriors buffs attack power by 10%. So that actually would benefit rogues and monks and druids. So, you know, your warrior is yeah, you wouldn't want to do without the warrior buff. If you had, say, a number of rogues, a couple of rogues, feral druid, windwalker monk, say, all that sort of stuff, you know, you probably wouldn't want to do without that. Well, obviously Blizzard haven't completely worked out the class buffs, otherwise they'd be in the alpha by now. then yes, that is the point. In a proper guild, as in one where you're actually working as a team, then the attitude should be that, you know, the team getting stronger is the important thing. Obviously, you don't want the average of the team getting too far ahead of you, because then all of a sudden you find yourself on the bench. There is a certain level of selfishness to being in a team, even, because you want to actually be on the field of play, not on the bench. But within that, yeah, you want to make sure that your stuff can go. Warlocks have the curse debuff, yeah. Still haven't seen what their eventual plan is for paladins. Specifically ret paladins, don't care about the others. The others get enough shinies as it is anyway. I think Rogue's got a debuff as well. Bugger, I keep forgetting what everyone's got. I need to write down what everyone has. Not everyone has something yet, though. I mean, what's really wanted? I mean, that's not going to... A wisdom is not going to compete with a raid buff, which is what... You know, all classes are going to bring a raid buff. It just needs to be a damage buff, not a defensive buff, that's all. Defensive ones are not useful on often enough. Right, let's see if we can find the rogue one. Oh, I can't see one on it. Maybe it's not in yet. Well, Solsacra was talking about a raid-wide Blessing of Might, where obviously the damage is not assigned to the paladin, because that would be ludicrous. Which would work. Basically, everyone does an extra 3% damage as holy. A passive heal as well as mana regen. I don't need that. Holy paladins can have that if they want. You don't see how having personal loot but still allow trading will work. No, none of the playing community are arguing that the personal loot will work. It's Blizzard that are arguing that. But Blizzard cannot remove the tradable aspect of it. Even if they wanted to, and there's no real... I don't really see any evidence that they even want to. I mean, no one's actually asked them directly, but they would never get away with removing that, ever. They would find a flying level backlash on their hands. Right, they don't have an active buff, Hunters. I can't see anything in the passive section either. So there's quite a lot of classes still don't have theirs in the alpha. So yes, it's probably safe to say that Blizzard are still doing a lot of umming and ahhing about what they even want. Is it normal for people to be having around 12 out of 36 Mage Tower skins? No. I suspect it's not normal to have any. I suppose it depends on what group of players you're talking about. You know, if I was to try and look up how many level 110s have any Mage Tower achievements, I would be surprised if it's more than 50%. But 12 is extraordinary. I think only dedicated alcoholics would have that many. I mean, I've got the ones now I wanted to get. As I said earlier, I might go for the Holy One just for the sake of completeness, even though I will never actually use it. No interest in using it at all. Load of rubbish. Want a one-hander and a shield. %70 of the gear you get on alts that you pug with is from trades. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, in a normal situation with personal loot is the norm. I would be very surprised if you get even half your gear from gear you acquire yourself. It's always better to sort of share it about. Yeah, I'm only going for the Mage Tower ones. Like, I couldn't not get the Protection Paladin one because of the like the Mace Flail, the Morning Star thing, because it looks so awesome. It looks pretty bad when it's on your belt and you're walking around with it because it drags on the ground. In fact, well, if it did drag on the ground, that'd actually be quite cool, but it doesn't. It goes into the ground, which is not good. But actually using it is awesome. What's my opinion on all the armour appearances that have been data mined? My opinion is that the armour pieces that we've seen look very, very good. What I am disappointed, well, I say disappointed, that's not true, because that implies that I hoped they'd do something different. But what I don't like is this restriction that we have on Transmog. I was saying this last night, and you know, in Elder Scrolls Online, but it doesn't matter. Elder Scrolls Online, Star Wars The Old Republic, Lord of the Rings Online, I can transmog into whatever the bloody hell I like on those. I can make whatever, it doesn't matter what class my character is, I can use whatever cosmetic gear I like on them. The fact that we can't do that in WoW is, to me, baffling. You know, because there's some really nice looking on some Kultiran NPCs, some really nice coats and hats and stuff like that. And you just look at it and you think, that's fantastic. I wish my character could wear that. But then you realise, if ever they made it available for characters, which is possible, it will be leather. You know, so it's hugely disappointing that only my leather characters can be stylish. And it is actually, now when I'm thinking about, it's actually one of the serious things I'm thinking about when I'm deciding which are going to be my main alts that I'm going to level up quickly for trade skills. You know, I'm leaning towards leather characters, largely because of that. Oh, dies, yeah. I mean, Blizzard did say something that there's a technical issue with dying. I'm not sure I believe it. I can't really argue with him because I have no technical knowledge at all. But yeah, the fact that they, you know, just do recolours of things all the time means that, yeah, they're not going to allow us just to do our own dyes, because then that reduces the amount of farming potential that they give us. I didn't necessarily say a rogue, Morphine. It might be a Windwalker monk, for example. They're nice. I like Windwalkers. And I'm not necessarily opposed to Mistweaver as well, if I had to heal on it. You don't get why you can't unlock transmogs for loot you get. Oh, yeah, I agree with that as well, Action Man. Yeah, that's another issue. Even when it's not your, you know, loot for your character, that it doesn't unlock for your other characters. Yeah, I agree with that too. That's disappointing as well. So many things, you know, they're so restrictive with Transmog, and it's I just don't get it. I do not get their reasoning. The Mage Tower. Yes, I'm quite sure most of them are easy at 930 item level. I mean, I did the prot one with like 960 something in prot gear, without any idea what I was doing. The irony was I was watching a guide while I was doing it, because I was watching the guide and really not paying attention, because I was just thought I'll just have a few goes to see what it's like. And it took me a few goes. I kept getting punted off. But after a few goes, I did it, and it's like I didn't really know what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing, but it didn't matter because I was in such high level of gear that it was easy. So I couldn't even tell you. Whereas after I did it on the Ret, when the first ever Mage Tower came out, I could sort of tell you what the mechanics were on the fight. But on the Prot one, which I've done more recently, couldn't. I don't know what the mechanics are. I know that the eyes thing do a thing that punch you off, so you kill them pretty quickly. But when you can kill them in one hit, that's not that bad. I also know that the Inquisitor spawns a death and decay type thing, which hurts it and stacks up. If you stay in it, then you actually might die. They probably made all their models with fixed assets instead of having tools that use options for areas of gear. No, I don't think so, Earth, though, because people can export stuff from the WoW model viewer into 3D editing programs, and the different sections of armour could come off, and they can recolour them. So I don't know that it's that. But anyway, it really doesn't matter whether it's true or not. They're never going to allow us to use dyes. So, I mean, that's not even a battle worth fighting. I'm not sure that any battle is worth fighting because, you know, I couldn't believe what they said at PAX about Transmog being in its infancy. I thought, what planet are they on? Seriously. Been out for nearly a decade. You've got Ashbringer the second time the Mage Tower was up. And that was a little tough at first. Now you can just survive all the mechanics without trying. Yeah. Well, see, I haven't done the Mage Tower. Sorry, the Ret one on any other characters of whatever item level, so I don't know how relatively easy it is to do on others. The DK Blood Mage Tower. Hang on a minute. You don't have Ceph as a secret. Are all the tank ones... I assume all the tank ones are the same. So you finished the last of the DPS ones today. Well, that's quite a lot. So you've got the 6 tank and the 5 healer ones to go. Well, yes, you don't have to mention that last bit about being an alcoholic. You know, if you've already done 25 of them, I can guess. Yeah, that's a good point. I have no idea how much health I actually had when the original one came out. Yeah, we may well have double now. I don't remember what I had then at the time, but yeah, I could believe you. Which I suppose, you know, with certain mechanics that would have all but killed you before, certainly would barely tickle now. A clown suit transmog, yes, that sounds quite good. But we're not allowed. I can have a clown suit in ESO if I want, but yeah. Where the Mage Tower came out, we were still in Nighthold, weren't we? It was the arse end of Nighthold. So Tomb of Sargeras hadn't come out yet. So that'd be round about 900 if you're in Mythic. Doing Mythic about a bit over 900 item level maybe. Or I suppose it depends on how much gear you had. Can't remember what my item level was. No, it wasn't before Nighthawk, it's on the Broken Shore. It's on the Broken Shore, so it had to be after Nighthold. It was when Nighthold was out, but before Tomb of Sargeras. It came out in 7.2, but not straight away. It had to be, you know, we had to first of all get to the first Mage Tower. Yeah, but they said they didn't want to fix gear and item level for the challengers because they wanted it to get easier for people who couldn't do it with skill. So they said they wanted it to remain a challenge throughout the expansion, but to get easier with gear. Oh, Disc Priest gets a different one, do they? But yeah, I thought all the tank ones would be the same. No, Broken Shore came out 11 weeks before the raid. Hence the whole 11, or not, actually it wasn't exactly 11 weeks, was it? But it was before Tomb of Sargeras. Tomb of Sargeras came out quite a few weeks later. I could actually look it up, actually, couldn't I? Let's find out. So let's have a look. Yeah, so Tomb of Sargeras, normal unlocked on June the 20th. That was a long time after 7.2 was like Easter or something. March 23rd. Oh no, is that right? No. Oh, bloody hell. April 2017 sounds about right. Because I remember doing it. In fact, I could easily have looked it up on my dashboard because it's one of my most viewed videos, that one. I just looked it up there. So yeah, so it was a good couple of months later before Tomb of Sargeras launched, the actual raid launched. Yeah, my health at the moment is about 6.6, 6.7 million. Oh, and the challenge, yes. I actually, you know, I had to put in the description a link to the actual time where I started the guide because unfortunately it got a bit muddled. And I ended up vlogging about it before I did. I should have split it into 2 different videos, really. But there you go. But yeah, the people who've watched it always sort of said that, you know, after watching it, they did end up then killing it. Even though I think I got one thing wrong in it, which is that I think some of the mechanics stopped based on time, whereas I thought it was based on health. But given that you can't redo it later with different gear or anything, I had no way of being able to tell the difference. Because if I do consistent damage time after time, then yeah, can't tell the difference between whether it's switching on health or whether it's switching on time. Is the new voice chat working on Alpha? Well, I think it might be, because I did notice, I haven't tried it, I daren't, but I did notice that on Friday when I was doing those scenarios, then they took it off, they applied like a bit of a fix. So when I went on Saturday, every time I went into the scenario, it came up with a, do you want to join the voice chat for this? So I am guessing it works. So Safian's just said it works, so there you go. Yes, I'd be scared to try the voice option. I remember when they first tried putting voice comms in the game, a long time ago now, and I did actually try it in a pug. It didn't seem to work very well, so But yeah, I'm not sure I would like the idea of it. I mean, I suppose it's a good thing. But, I mean, all this communities thing that they're trying to do is all about, I think, getting people off other, like, things like Discord and stuff like that. Because they want more control over it. I mean, it would be a lot easier. Let's say, you know, you're in a pug raid. It's a lot better than all piling onto someone else's Discord that you can just go on voice chat. Will Blizzard be able to listen to your conversations? Yes. If you use a Blizzard app for voice comms, then yeah. Moderators have got nothing to do with like where they are in the game. It's entirely to do with, can they tell the difference between, you know, someone being friendly and someone not. In fact, you know, moderators on a class community thing run by Blizzard would be far more restrictive about what you can and can't say. I mean, they won't kill the Discords off for class stuff anyway, because on the class Discords you can have channels. You can specifically have channels that are that exclude Blizzard employees to discuss things. As well as obviously the public ones are obviously they can come in, but you know, the fact that you can have like the ones on the Paladin Discord, you know, where Blizzard employees are not, so then you can basically, you know, speak your mind without fearing upsetting a special snowflake working at Blizzard HQ. Because some of them seem to be a bit precious. Yeah, you can on voice chat. What I mean is, if you've got see, voice chat's only any good for people there at the same time. You know, what you really want is a written one, which you can also have with the Blizzard communities thing. But you see no value in 7 out of 11 Mythic players claiming to be veterans of a class. They are veterans though. If they've played it for X number of years, that's the definition of veteran. A veteran isn't someone who's reached a certain level. That's elite. You're confusing, Safian, there, the definitions of elite and veteran. Veteran is to do with experience, like length of experience. Elite is to do with how high up the pyramid you've gone. And also, where you are in raid progress is entirely down to which guild you're in anyway. I mean, in TBC, for example, when I killed Kel'Thas, it was something like world 130, 140-ish, something like that. When I killed, or not killed, but stuff killed Jaden down his hole, it was like world 70-something. Same player, but I was in a different guild. No, but if you can do a perfect rotation on a dummy, at least you can then pay more attention to the actual mechanics. People, although people fixate too much on, say, sim DPS numbers, as if that means anything, nonetheless, people should use training dummies to practice stuff. So they don't have to pay too much attention to what they're doing with their class when they're in the raid. They might pay more attention to the mechanics then. Right, do you know what? There's going to be like 5 more minutes and we are going to have to finish on time. I hope, because I am going to hope that there's enough people in my guild that's going to be doing the war fronts. Hang on, let me just ask. See if people are actually going to be doing it. Yes. Well, what my plan is, if there's enough to be doing it, I can't see. I'd expect by now, because it's supposed to be in 5 minutes, for people to be getting themselves organised now, but I don't see anyone in the voice chats in the guild. Although there's enough in the alpha now. I mean, all these people that were complaining about not being in the alpha, now they're in the alpha, and it's like, oh, do I have to roll a character to do these war fronts? Like, you've got alpha, why aren't you doing it? But the plan would be to close this stream down and then go for a piss, and then immediately reopen a couple of minutes later with a slightly different title, just to tidy this up, and do that. But I don't see. I don't know. Hang on, let me try and log into the alpha itself. So it may be that there isn't a group to it in. I'll have to go on my Horde character, because it's only Horde that get to test it this time. Which is probably sensible. It gives them the best chance of having more people available, even though you can easily faction change your character. But I'm not seeing the GM online on the alpha. So maybe not, I don't know. Ah, yes, my alliance ret was stuck in that, so I just basically deleted them. I mean, they may have fixed it at some point, but I assumed they weren't going to. Let me just check here. I'm not sure they're actually going to. But anyway, well, I'll work on the assumption they might. I'll close this down anyway. I'm going to go for a piss, as I say. I'll reopen it on the alpha and we'll just have to see if we get a raid. If not, then, you know, that'll be that. And if there is, then that will also be that. So I'll just say to anyone who's not going to plan on watching that, thanks very much for watching. Anyone who's on YouTube watching this at the moment, obviously, thanks for watching this far, blimey. Until next time, I will see you later. But if you're on now and you want to try and watch me get into maybe not a group, then I will be back in like 2 minutes. So see you later.